Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 203 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on March 19th, 2024. How are all you wonderful folks doing? Man, I hope you're doing well. I'm doing pretty good. We are all gas, no brakes, as they say. That's right, we're moving pretty quick. I have some great new data for you today. It's pretty cool. That's right. Published concurrently with this podcast is a new 9mm pistol silencer white paper. Yeah, that's cool. The Inert Haze Ti-P. Yeah. Some of you have probably heard of Inert Haze. It's a relatively small company. Some of you may not have heard of them. I think they're relatively new within the past year or so. You'll have to check out the article. The silencer is pretty cool. We'll give an introductory talk for that on today's episode, so stick around for that. We're also going to dive back into listener questions. That's right, they're back, and we keep chipping away at the tremendous 6th solicitation. So we're making some good progress. I did take a sneak peek. I looked at the ones that are up on the docket today, and okay, I'm going to be honest with you. There's some silly ones in there, but there are also some good technical ones, I think, to go along with them. So it should be good. It should be a good mix. Okay. So before we get into this, I did want to give you guys a brief word about the gracious sponsors who make this podcast possible. That's right. So if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, you can skip to each topic using the timestamps in the episode description. Made it easy for you there. But for the rest of you, let me tell you about Legion Athletics. That's right. The J Situation Podcast is proudly sponsored by Legion Athletics because nothing you do, exercise, sports, really anything is worth doing without consistency, right? You got to do something all the time if you really want to be good at it. And Legion Athletics can help with that. Okay, they got whey protein and pre-workout, post-workout, vitamins, minerals, all kinds of stuff. They don't have everything you need, but they do have a lot of it, okay? If you visit legionathletics.com, there's a link in the show notes that makes it easy for you. Use code word PewScience to save 20% off of your first order. That's right, and if you keep using that code for double loyalty points, you'll end up getting a net 10% off everything you order with a code going forward. That's kind of how that works out. It's pretty cool. So use code word PewScience every time you buy something from there. It helps the show. It helps you save money. It's a win-win. Okay, so get strong. It's important. The podcast is also brought to you by Top Gun Range Houston. If you're in the Houston area, even if you're just passing through on a business trip or something, maybe go shoot some gats. That's right. They're worth checking out. In addition to having a 15-lane indoor shooting range, rain or shine, they have the largest firearm rental fleet in the entire state of Texas. It's crazy. You can rent pistols and rifles and shotguns and machine guns and silencers. And man, those wait times right now. I don't want to jinx it, but dude, the e-forms and I don't know. People are getting silencers back really quickly. If you're in Houston and you want to go shoot some silencers to see what you like, check out Top Gun Range. They're right there. It's kind of cool. What a time to be alive, right? Check out their inventory at topgunrange.com. All right. Also, the podcast is brought to you by High End Armament Technologies, a dealer of exactly that, high-end arms and accessories. These are the guys where, you need to get some kind of crazy lasers, crazy guns that cost a lot of money that you can never find, like some kind of crazy Knights Armament or HK stuff for you collectors. They're or you need some kind of weird laser that maybe fell off the truck. Check them out at High End Arms on Instagram. They have a Facebook page, which is High End Arms, and you can go to their website at highendarms.com. Okay, tell them Jay sent you. This podcast is also brought to you by the fine folks at Silencer Shop. That's right. You can use their kiosk. You can do your fingerprints and photos electronically. You can cut down on errors. You simplify your silencer purchasing process. You get a money back guarantee. It's pretty good. You don't pay a transfer fee. You have a low propensity for paperwork errors. It's just you and your silencer with no drama, and they really have done quite a lot of work to expand, the silencer market in many areas. A lot of dealers that otherwise wouldn't carry a lot of inventory and things are able to kind of use SensorShop as a back end. And still, I'm not 100% sure on all the different margins and everything that the dealers that sell sensors make, but I think SensorShop can help with that, So all in all, like with regard to the technology they use and the way they've helped sensors proliferate through the market, I think it's a pretty big deal. Like overall, I think that there's a lot of product moving through their system, and I think more people have sensors than ever before, which stands to reason, of course. But it is worth mentioning because I think they have made a significant contribution to the consumer silencer industry. So go check them out. You don't have to buy silencers there, but you can, and they move a lot of them. Also, just so you know that probably the most important thing you should know about all these ads is that this podcast is brought to you by Pew Science. It's the Pew Science Laboratory. I'm the technical director of the lab. In the interest of public education, we sponsored this podcast. We run a public research effort. All of that pushes the sensor industry forward, one test at a time, much like the test we'll talk about today. That's right. If you visit pewscience.com for the suppression rating, you'll see the simplest and most accurate hearing safe rating for your suppressed small arms. That is based on true human inner ear response of the entire gunshot from before combustion takes place all the way until all the combustion is gone, which is very important. Okay, Pew Science is the home of the silencer sound standard. There are 7 sections. It's the most in-depth and accurate silencer data and analysis in the world. It's all available to the public 24/7 at pewscience.com. Please go check it out. And you listening, you can support this podcast as well. You can support Pew Science, all the public testing that we do for you by joining with a membership at pewscience.com. That really helps. We're in your debt for that. It does keep the effort going forward. There's also a donate feature on the podcast page or review page. If you're not into monthly stuff and you just want to, throw us a bone every once in a while, that's awesome. And you know what? If you don't want to give anything, which is totally fine, you definitely don't have to give anything monetarily. You can just spread the word. It doesn't cost you anything. Just let folks know that sensors and guns are awesome. Normalize the use of suppressed small arms worldwide, which in theory is good for everyone. Okay. So we have, again, 2 topics prepared for you today. The first is topic 1. Listener questions are back. Yes, they are. We're going to continue to make our way through the 6th solicitation. And like I was saying earlier, there are some silly questions today. It looks like today we're going to tackle everything from pizza to blast physics to sparking to predictive results. There's so many things. So it should be cool. And then in topic 2, a new sound signature review. That's right, a new white paper, Sound Signature Review 6145, the Inert Haze Suppressors Ti-P on the HK P30L semi-automatic combat handgun. That's right. Well, we're going to revisit centerfire pistol silencers. That's awesome. We're going to take a look at this design evolution of the Resilient Suppressors RSP. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in this intro. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh, you're going to. Wild, right? Yeah, you never know what you're going to get. Okay, all right. So we're going to move into topic 1 at a time of 8 minutes and 34 seconds. Oh, very good. Okay, we'll move into topic 1 here, listener questions. Oh, man, the 6th solicitation. We're doing it. We're going to go back in here. Your questions are numerous. Some of them are silly, but it's okay to be silly sometimes. You can't be serious all the time in life. You'll never get out alive. Yeah. Okay, we're going to open the spreadsheet here. Okay, I have my big old spreadsheet. Okay, we're going to go back in here. Okay, where did we leave off in our journey together? Okay, so last time, and again, I'm going to say this. I know you guys have heard me say this before, but there's new people. So if you're looking for the listener questions episodes for this podcast, and you want to go back and listen to previous ones, if you go to pewscience.com/podcast, where all the episodes are, there are metadata tags below each episode entry, and there will be a listener questions one below this one. And if you click that, it'll pull up all the listener questions episodes. You can also, there's also a Google search box on the podcast page where you can just search listener question. You can find stuff there too. But anyway, there's a lot of different ways to get to it. So we are in the 6th solicitation. That's the 6th round. And last time we did this, we left off on, we finished answering global question number 454, the local question 40 of the 6th solicitation. And that question was shot timing. How does Pew Science control shot cadence and potential impact on silencer performance? That was such an excellent question, and I wanted to answer that talking about our test protocols, and that's we use a very strict test protocol to ensure quality control with respect to that type of those type of physics, and there were significant we pay significant attention to that. It's actually one of the reasons our testing is so awesome, if I do say so myself. Yeah, but if you want to hear me talk about that more, tune into that episode, okay? And so this episode will pick up with question 455, so question 41. Does pineapple belong on pizza? I saw this and I was like, I can believe you're asking it because it's a good question. So let me repeat that. Does pineapple belong on pizza? Well, you're using a very strong word there, sir or ma'am. Belong. That's a pretty strong word for pineapple. Now, okay. So, have I eaten pizza that has pineapple? Yes, I have. Did I like it? Yes, because I like pizza and I love America. Okay, so 2 things I love. I love pizza and America. Now, I do believe that you need something salty on the pizza to balance the sweetness of the pineapple, or you're going to have a bad time. Okay, look, I'm going to answer this question, but I'm going to answer it truthfully. All right, let's be real. Don't make believe you can eat pineapple on pizza in a vacuum. Okay, so look, when I eat pizza, one thing I am not interested in doing is having a dessert. Okay, if I wanted a dessert shaped like pizza, I eat one of those large cookies with a big glass of milk. Like those cookie cake things. If I wanted pizza that was a dessert, I just eat a cookie. And I have a bunch of milk, and it'd be great, okay? But if I'm going for pizza, I want it to be a balanced flavor potential around the whole thing, right? I want if you put pineapple on it, you're gonna have to hit me with some anchovies. You're gonna have to hit me maybe some Kalamata olives, maybe some Italian meats that are pretty salty. You know what I'm saying? If you're just using Italian meats for the balance, you're to balance the pineapple, you have to go with something salty. Okay, again, I cannot overstate how important it is to balance the sweetness. If your pizza tastes too sweet, you're going to have a bad time. I'm telling you. Now to answer your question, pineapple does not belong on a pizza, but it can. It also can certainly be invited to stay on a pizza within reason. Okay, I'm not going to say it belongs there, but I'm going to say you can make it work. Okay, that's my answer about pineapple on pizza. I think anchovies, which are very salty, Italian meats, Kalamata olives, balance that sweetness, and I think you're good. Okay. So, question 4. I hope that answers your question, weirdo. Question 456, sub-question 42. Any information on silenced wheel guns, like a Nagant revolver or certain others? Actually, no, sir. We don't have any data on anything like that simply because they aren't common. I'm sure that if someone wants to loan us a Nagant revolver and perhaps ammunition for said revolver, we would test that. Now, for those of you who don't know, revolvers don't typically suppress very well because the blast loads escape from the lack of the cylinder seal. That's right. So a Nagant revolver, with that type of revolver, it's special. It actually provides that seal during its operation, thus suppressing better than a typical revolver. And that is why this lady or gentleman asked that question, because that specific revolver actually does offer reportedly offer some decent suppression over like a regular revolver, which would not. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps answer, I guess, make everyone aware of that. But with regard to test data, no, not a lot of people have those. So it's like, I don't really. It'd be like a curiosity more than anything. But it'd be a cool test. We do it. So thank you. Question 457, sub-question 43. I don't want to curse and make the whole, like, a lot of kids listen to this, so okay, how am I going to abbreviate this? Okay, this person's using that acronym SHTF, so stuff hitting the fan. Okay, so I'm going to say that. So in a stuff hitting the fan scenario, which single thermal are you grabbing? When the stuff hits the fan, what thermal are you grabbing? That's a good question. So that's easy for me. A spotter. It's funny. I think we talked about this last episode too, right? Or last listener question episode. The spotter. That's what I'm grabbing. Like handheld spotter, no question. Like that way I can see stuff easily. Maybe I can have someone spot for me if I need to when I'm aiming a rifle. You want something with the highest utility. So you may be tempted to say, well, if you have a weapon mounted thing, you can break that off and use it as a separate spotter too. That's cool. That's fine. But in your imaginary scenario, sir, you're gonna have time to check zero on that and moving it? I don't know, dude. You sure you're gonna be okay? And that complication, and then what? It's the only sight on your rifle, and you're relying on batteries, and the stuff has hit the fan. What if the power's out? No. I think you throw the handheld in a bag. Like I do. You get your solar charger. For the battery packs. I think that's exactly what I would do in this Mad Max scenario of yours. Wait, is Mad Max stuff hit the fan? Is that the same? No. Maybe the Mad Max would be like if like that's like the long end result of society collapsing after the fan gets hit, right? Like years down the line, right? Is that what you guys? Are you a prepper? Is that what you guys talk when the stuff hits the fan? Is that the preppers? Isn't there like a show on that TV about that or something? I don't know. You got a lot of water and like grain, like a bunker. Well, that's fine. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just questioning the logic. No. Maybe what do you got? Like weird dudes huffing paint. And pedaling bicycles to charge my thermal batteries. That would be like a Mad Max thing, right? That movie. Anyway, good question. Question 458, sub-question 44. MP5K, B&T APC9, or MPX, that's a SIG MPX, as quietest, least gassy for 9mm. I'm guessing you would say SP5K. Okay, you said MP5, now you're saying SP5. Yeah, I know what you mean. Sir, okay, thank you for asking the question. I would say, not even having tested all of those, I'm going to say MP5. The B&T gun I know is blowback, so get rid of that. And then the MPX is a piston gun, right? Even though it's 9mm, I'm pretty sure it's a piston. Isn't that a piston? I think it's a piston. Some sort of piston in there. So yeah, I think MP5. When in doubt for silencers, I say MP5. Now, yeah, it's old. There's a reason we like it, though. I'm not saying you can't explore other options. There are probably great options. And look, I'm not even saying those other two options are necessarily bad. The B&T and the MPX, or the B&T APC9 and the SIG MPX. I'm not saying they're bad, but since you asked which one would be quietest and have the least gas, it's got to be MP5. Now, I will say specifically, you actually said you're talking about the K gun, and I feel like the full size gun is pretty good, but go for the K gun if you want. Just know it's not going to shoot quite as nice as the full size is going to shoot. Physics is real, despite your best efforts to negate them. No, physics is real. So you might have more fun with the full size, but small can be cool too. Just know what you're getting into, especially with like ergonomics. Like if you do get a K gun, get a like the B&T folding stock for the MP5K is pretty ergonomically good compared with like the fixed A2 stock for the full size, which is my favorite. If you some of those stocks for the MP5s just they look cool, but if you're gonna be shooting a lot, just consider you can try some out. Maybe your friends have some. Okay, hope that helps. Question 459, sub-question 45. Oh, and before we go on, to your question, sir, you're talking about the quietest and the least gassy. The reason I'm saying MP5 was because the roller delayed blowback is going to keep that chamber closed for a longer period of time. Now, if you have a super low back pressure silencer, maybe that changes, but the MPX, the piston makes me nervous, and the B&T blowback just, I don't know about that. So that's why I thought MP5. Okay? Sorry I didn't specifically address the physics of that, but that's what I meant to say. Now, okay, so sorry, moving on. 459, some question 45. With high flow rate silencers, are short dwell time barrels still advantageous? Thanks, ... You're welcome, ... Okay, let me elaborate on your question a little bit, sir, to help people. So this guy is specifically talking about gas-driven ARs. That's what he's talking about. So he's talking about it doesn't have to be an AR, but he's talking about gas-operated reciprocating rifles. And he's talking about the dwell time of the system defined as the time it takes for the bullet to travel from gas port to muzzle. He's talking about sorry, my brain kind of locked up. He's talking about the dwell time on those systems being a positive or a negative for performance based upon silencer flow rate. And he's saying if your silencer has a really high flow rate and it's not going to influence artificially inflate your dwell time too much, does your initial dwell time even matter? Do you need to start with a low dwell time system? I mean, I think that's what he's saying. So it's a good question, and I think the gas sensitivity of your host weapon, it could also be called the silencer sensitivity of the host weapon. And so if your silencer is super high, it is super high flow rate, meaning super low back pressure, and it doesn't adversely affect the operation of most weapons, then for you, dwell time might not matter as much, assuming you can adjust your gas port, which is actually pretty dang important because your system could be super overgassed, unsuppressed. I don't know. Okay? I don't know. I really don't know. Now, it should be said that shortening the dwell time isn't the end-all be-all. It's just that if you have really long dwell time and you're using a silencer that's going to artificially increase it by a lot because it has high back pressure, you're fighting yourself. And that's why starting with a shorter dwell time host can be cool. So your question, it's a good one. So if you have a super low back pressure silencer, your weapon cares less about it. So the characteristics of your weapon become less important to the suppressed system and more important to the weapon functioning in general. So you're really, if your silencer has super high flow rate, what your gun is doing matters less in this scenario because the silencer is really not affecting what the gun is doing. So as long as your gun is set up how you like it, when you add a super low back pressure silencer to a gun, the gun's just going to work how it was working. Does that make sense? Like dwell time plays a role when you know that your gun's going to be affected a lot. So you want to start off. You don't want to start off on too much of a deficit. And a super high dwell time can start you off in a deficit with a high back pressure silencer. Okay, you get a little more wiggle room with a lower dwell time with super high back pressure is all. Okay, it's more of just like, and again, I mean, you can play with the tuning. It's just, it's all about where you're starting. Like, here's a good example. Like those Huxworks silencers, the OSS silencers. One of the reasons why a lot of folks use those is because they don't have to worry about their gun at all. They'll, within reason. They'll put one on the gun and be like, the gun was running fine before, the gun's still running fine. And they don't have to worry about that as much. Now, sometimes that's good. Sometimes the performance isn't what they want, but nonetheless, the gun doesn't care as much. Well, that's what, like, if you're talking about that type of high flow rate silencer, sure, like maybe your dwell time doesn't matter as much because you're not really affecting the system much. But let's say you put a super high back pressure silencer on there that's known to really, really adversely affect the operation of the weapon. Well, starting with a low dwell time, it could be good. It could be good. You might have to tune your gun more if your dwell time is really long. It just depends. It depends how your weapon is tuned before you put a silencer on it, too. Not all systems are created equal, and there's certainly a lot of variables, so it's kind of hard to answer, without a specific case. I hope that helps, though. All right, 1 second. Question 460, so question 46. When are we collaborating for a true suppressor host for the people? Oh, this is when industry people get in the Instagram question thing and try to trip me up. I can't talk about that. It's a good question. No, I think, no, sir. Look, I know you talked to me about this a while back. Pew Science can't comment on skunkwork projects like this. That's not. Next thing you know, we're gonna have PewSoft being self-aware. It's gonna be making like blueberry pancakes. Maybe we upgrade the little hamsters that power the systems to using humans to power them. Yeah. That's actually what we don't need right now. What we don't need right now, we don't need human slavery by the machines. Now, I see enough of this NVIDIA stuff with the AI chips. You guys been following this stuff? Look, remember when like NVIDIA was just making graphics cards and we just wanted to play video games? Like, remember like a couple decades ago and it was like, yeah, just gonna play video games. Remember that? Remember when they started to get popular after? Remember that company 3DFX made the SLI graphics cards a long time ago, like back in the day when like OpenGL just first started being used and everything. I remember those days. I'm old, but now you got NVIDIA. They're making robots. Look, I think I should have bought their stock back then. I would be retired now, frankly, but I didn't have money. Look, I think the machines are going to take over, and sir, we will work on a gun together. I'm certain we will. We might have to fight the machines, you see. It has nothing to do with Pew Science. So that's how I'm going to answer that so I don't get in trouble. Okay. Question 461, sub-question 47. Why does 9.5 inches feel so good in my hand? Photo of the Hyperion. Oh, that's right. This guy took a photo of the Hyperion, and apparently you can respond to those question solicitations with photos now on Instagram. They've enabled that function for you miscreants to do. It says, and he was holding it as like, why does 9.5 inches feel so good? Sir, I think you're using the wrong app on your phone. No, it's a great silencer. If you can take the length, it's a good silencer. You can put it on a lot of different stuff, 300 blackout, 308, whatever. Performs pretty well. It's a good rifle silencer for that, I think. I mean, everyone knows that. Enjoy it. But sending me photos like that's weird, so don't do that anymore. Question 462, sub-question 48. When are we all getting tacos again? I think about that place a lot. Okay, see, this is just going off the rail. You guys it's not technical, and people they're not going to like this. Sir, okay, I'm going to be polite. I'm going to say we need to get tacos again, sir. And this is another guy. Look, next time you're in town, we're going to go. This guy's talking about, I have a secret Mexican food spots I don't tell anyone about unless you're hanging out when we go. Look, let me tell you this. I have really learned to appreciate bone marrow being added to tacos. I think bone marrow should be used more often in dishes. In general, it's definitely good for you. It adds something extra. I feel also that lime and cilantro are very important. And somewhere along the way, I feel like people forgot about using lime and cilantro. So I want you to remember that. Never forget the limes. Question 463, sub-question 49. We're going to get through this. I'm gonna get to silencer stuff here. Question 49. If you published every test result you have, what would be the total number be? I don't know. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. We have much more than we published, and we'll never publish all of it. Just some of it's not appropriate. I don't have the information off the top of my head, but maybe I'll get to that to you eventually. Probably not. Let's get into. Okay, here we go. Here's some silencer stuff. Question 464, subquestion 50. What effect does reduced muzzle pressure of the 14.5 inch versus 10.3 inch have with newer technologies like OSS flow-through, CGS Hyperion, and are examples? That's a good question. And I think this lady or gentleman is asking this because this was around the time we did the test of the RC2 and we saw that, oh man, you get to a 14.5 inch barrel, it really doesn't even get that much quieter. Weird. Well, you're talking about 5.56. I know that because you're talking about 14.5 and 10.3. You're mentioning two incredibly different technologies, the flow-through and the Hyperion. But both of those technologies happen to react differently to higher pressures. So that's a good question. With the Hyperion technology, we see some strange things with higher pressures. We do. That's for sure. Now, we see really good performance as the pressure drops, though, too. It does a lot of interesting things. Now, with the flow-through OSS stuff and the HuxWorks stuff, the newer iterations of the flow-through things are seemingly a little better with lower pressures, but the higher pressure seems to be still favored. We're going to have to do more studies to really isolate those variables, sir. Let me read your question again. What effect does reduced muzzle pressure of the 14.5 to 10.3 have with newer technology? Okay, so let me just go back to that directly. So moving from Mark 18 to 14.5 with an OSS. I think I don't know. It'd probably be similar at the ear, quieter with the muzzle, and same with the Hyperion. The Hyperion has higher back pressure though, so 14.5, yeah. I bet you get, and you've never seen a Hyperion on an AR, but it's not low back pressure with a combustion like that, and so the shooter's ear is not horrible, but it's not super awesome. So yeah, I don't think you're gonna run into anything crazy with predicting those results, moving barrel lengths. I think you probably follow a trend of what you would generally expect. There is a chance that you don't get super improved performance with an OSS, but again, we haven't done a lot of testing with those two systems on those two lengths, so jury's out. Okay. Question 465, sub-question 51. Could you explain the omega and alpha metrics in simplistic terms and the effects they have on things? Yes. You know what? That's a great question, and I can absolutely do that. I can absolutely do that for you. Excellent. Okay, one second. Okay, so this lady or gentleman is asking to speak about the omega metric and the alpha parameter. So these are both research parameters, the omega metric being formally published even with the derivation and methodology for gathering it and recording it, calculating it, and the alpha parameter being more of a conceptual term. And so I think we can talk about both. So let's start with omega, since that was presented on the website first, and it's visual for you. So the omega metric is simply the inverse of the rate of gas momentum transfer out of the end of the silencer. Now, the higher the omega, the more slowly gas comes out physically, okay? The lower the omega, the faster the gas comes out physically, okay? That's the easiest way to explain that because it's true. And that's what happens. Now, overall, omega gives you a quick look at a couple of different things. It tells you in a gross sense how much of a gas trap a silencer is, which can be useful for a few different reasons related to back pressure. It also tells you how a silencer might perform in different environments other than the free field. Yeah, because it's like how much gas momentum is coming out. You know what I mean? So when you combine omega with some other terms and waveform parameters in your analysis, it becomes very powerful. One of those terms is alpha. And let's define that in simple terms because it's complementary in some ways. So the alpha parameter, it's a simplified term that Pew Science came up with it's a catch-all quantity to describe impulse accumulation at the barrel muzzle inside the silencer, okay? So this is just like omega, but instead of at the end cap, it's at the proximal end of the silencer in the blast chamber near the muzzle, okay? This is the term that can really influence weapon kinematics many times, and in conjunction with omega can actually define the complete back pressure characteristics of the silencer. Okay? Inside the blast chamber, you have blast, go figure, which is overpressure, and because it is happening over a period of time, you get impulse. Now, the impulse accumulates in the blast chamber and if it doesn't clear off of certain surfaces and if it doesn't vent, you will continue to accumulate it, and your accumulated impulse will manifest in various ways. And one generator of that impulse is blast load reflections off of the blast baffle and even potentially off of the muzzle device of the silencer, which comes back down the barrel toward you. That's right. So just like you can imagine a silencer trapping gas out of its end cap, the silencer can also create flow resistance earlier in time and earlier in the silencer, and that resistance is actually reflected shock loads. And the less of that going on, the lower the alpha metric. Okay? So I know I said a lot, and I know you asked for a simple explanation, so how about this? How about, now I'm going to give you some examples so that you can think about practically. Okay, 1 second. Need some water. Okay, I'll give you some examples you can think about practically. First example, let's think about like an OSS silencer, like an HXQD 556 or something. One of the Helix, one of those older Helix flow-through silencers, right? It has a let's start with it, and let's say very low alpha and low omega too. Okay? What does that mean? Low alpha and low omega. What does that mean? Well, the blast loads don't reflect back down the barrel that much. That's the low alpha, and then the silencer doesn't trap gas very long. Well, that's a low omega. Okay. That's that silencer. Okay, let's change it a little bit. What about the Huxworks Flow 762? Still flow through. Different technology. Still has a low alpha, but omega's a little higher. Oh, man. Omega is a little higher. What does that mean when I'm saying omega is a little higher? Well, let's talk through it. So you still have a low alpha. So the blast loads, they're still not reflecting back super crazy time. Let me say that in a more technical way. Your impulse accumulation at the barrel muzzle is not running away. It's low alpha, but the overall back pressure is a little higher than it was with the older OSS silencers. What is that? Well, the Omega got a little higher, didn't it? Yeah. Why did they do that? Why would they do such a thing? Well, they wanted to make it quieter. But how? How do they do that? How did they keep a low alpha and make Omega higher? Well, they created more turbulence through long and they have longer flow paths. That's how they made the gas take longer to come out. Remember, Omega is a pure measure of gas momentum transfer 1 meter left of the muzzle in the free field. It's measured. It's not proprietary. That's one thing. Do not think this alpha and Omega thing are proprietary. It's not proprietary. I've seen that word used so much. I don't think that word means what you think it means, dude. Like, this is literally just math. It's measured data and math. The real things, and that's why the Flow 762 has a higher Omega than the HXQD 556 because gas takes longer to get out, and the key was keeping the alpha low, so they helped the weapon not care as much. That's why Huxworks was able to do that. Their silencer's still low back pressure. It's all about the physics, man. So that's one example about where you're keeping alpha relatively constant, but you're changing Omega. Big difference. Okay, what's another example of that? What's another example? Hyperion. Oh my gosh. Oh, what does that have? Well, it has a mid-range alpha. It's not super low alpha. It's kind of mid-range. Super high Omega though, right? So how does that manifest in some strange ways? Well, with the Hyperion, with the full-size Hyperion, you could, with subsonic 300 blackout on like a semi-auto, your weapon might not even function because the Hyperion, one of the ways its alpha drops is because it has a vent. It has a vent past the first orifice that goes into the annulus that it lets you vent so early that you might not have enough impulse accumulation in the blast chamber and down the barrel that you just might not have enough gas impulse in your gas tube because your impulse accumulation just isn't there. Now, if you can get the gun to work right, it's super quiet, so that's awesome. Now, it just isn't going to provide enough alpha to get that because with subsonic 300 blackout. Even though the silencer has a high Omega, you don't have enough combustion. You're not generating enough impulse for the Hyperion to give you back pressure later in time. So you don't even take advantage of Omega with subsonic for cycling, but you take advantage of it for signature. That's why a Hyperion is so quiet on 300 blackout. But it may not cycle your weapon correctly. You see what I mean? That's the difference between alpha and Omega. And them working for you or against you. Now, when you go to supersonic 308, because the combustion duration is a lot longer and the pressure is way higher, the mid to low range alpha for the Hyperion, it's going to help the weapon not to overfunction sometimes compared to some other big silencers that have high Omegas, but you're probably still going to get some gas. And because the Omega is so high, you're eventually going to overwhelm the system with cartridges having a lot of combustion, like Supersonic 556, Supersonic 308. Okay, the alpha is not low enough to mitigate the effects of the high Omega on a Hyperion. Okay, so that's kind of a special case, but it's a good example because it has some real world things you can relate to with regard to functioning with subsonic 300 blackout. On a semi-auto, okay, even though the silencer's trapping gas forever, there's not enough gas at a certain time in a certain part of the time regime to matter because it's venting too quickly and there's not enough of the duration to vent or duration to accumulate. Got it? Okay. Hope that's clear. Now, okay, let's think about it. What's another one? Another example. Okay, so far, what have we done? We've talked about low alpha and varying Omega flow-through stuff. Like old OSS versus new Huxworks. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about medium alpha and high Omega. That's Hyperion. And if you want to go deeper into that analogy, get a Hyperion K where you have a low alpha and a low omega. So you can see what happens there. That same thing. You can mess with that analogy. So what's another example? We can talk. Let's talk about having a high alpha and then very omega. Oh, we haven't talked about that yet. Let's talk about that. And this you can do all day long because it's the simplest examples. This is the simplest type of silencer. Let's use rugged suppressors, because they have some of the simplest silencers made. Take the Razor, the Radiant, the Radiant long and short, the Surge long and short. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different silencers, really. In every single one of those, almost every single one of them, the alpha is really similar. Why? Well, the blast chamber is of similar dimension. The blast baffle shape is similar. So the expansion volume into the blast chamber is similar. The angle of incidence of the shock load impact on the blast baffles are similar, so the reflections are similar. So overall, for a given weapon system with each of those silencers in early time, the impulse accumulation rate inside the blast chamber is, for all intents and purposes, very similar. So that means the alpha state is similar in all the silencers. Now, what's different about all the silencers? The amount of baffles. Adding baffles makes the omega go up. So in the case of the rugged silencers, back pressure is directly related to omega because alpha is a constant, so the alpha falls out of the equation. If alpha is the same in every single back pressure, back pressure is the actual back pressure equation has alpha. It's very complicated. It has alpha and omega in it. What if alpha was constant for all the silencers and you were comparing the total back pressure for all the silencers? Well, you would just take alpha out because it would just go out of every single equation because it's constant. It's the same in every one. So if you remove it from everything, that's why omega works directly for rugged silencers across. Or conversely, or is conversely the right term? Or similarly, if any silencer type has identical alpha, you can get a back pressure relationship by scaling omega. So again, these are simple silencers. It's easy to quantify their back pressure with omega because of the time regime of combustion and the blast chambers being similar. If let's to be clear, so we're not talking around this, like a Razor has less back pressure than a rugged Surge in the short configuration because there's less baffles in a Surge and the blast chamber is the same in both silencers. Or there's less baffles in a Razor and the blast chamber is the same in both silencers. So the alpha is almost identical. The omega is wildly different. That's why the Razor has less back pressure at the end. It's literally that simple with rugged silencers. That's one of the reasons why rugged silencers were presented in one of the first case studies when omega was presented. Because a lot of the silencer sound standards started with rugged silencers being used as case studies because they were my personal silencers and I had bought them and I was confused about why they were sounding like they were because everyone told me they were super quiet, and so they became lab rats for me. And I studied them a lot. Okay, so let's talk about something. So this was just a case of low alpha and varying omega. Now let's talk about what you could do to make them more complicated. What if you went and you drilled holes in the blast baffles of the rugged silencers, which I do not recommend. Don't drill holes in Stellite. Don't do that. It's brittle. It'll break. Don't do that. If you did drill holes in the blast baffles of those silencers, which again, I don't recommend, what would happen? Well, you might lower the alpha a little bit, which could change the back pressure relationship of the systems. Okay, so like if you drilled holes in a Surge blast baffle, all of a sudden the back pressure relationship with it and the Razor would be maybe different because the back pressure equation has alpha and omega in it, and you've changed alpha. So now you're not allowed to take alpha out anymore. You're not allowed. You have to keep it in. It's no longer a constant. It is now a variable. You must consider it. You see? Okay, I hope that helps you. I know that you asked, going back to your original question, sir, or ma'am, you asked, can you explain the omega and alpha metrics in simplistic terms and effects they have on things? And I did, although it was long, but I it's important that you understand all of that. So listen to it again if you need to. Okay, hope it helps everybody. Okay, we're gonna keep going because that got my juices flowing. Question 466, sub question 52. Wait, how are we doing on time? Oh, 50 minutes? Yeah, we can finish this within 2 hours, which will be less than an hour and a half, I bet. Question 466, sub question 52. Would a perforated steel tube running through titanium baffles effectively reduce sparking? Perforated steel tube running through Ti baffles. So you're talking about axially, like through the core itself, like through the bore. Okay, perforated too. So you're letting the bullet go through there, and the gas come out of the tube. Oh, it's not like that Jesse James silencer, right? Yeah. Okay. Sure. Potentially sure. But so your question is you put a tube through the baffles that are titanium, and since the tube is steel, yeah, maybe you reduce the sparking. Okay. Yeah, I'd buy that. But let's also talk about the fact that you might also potentially reduce the effectiveness of the silencer. Because why? Because you're no longer letting gas expand into the baffle cavities as readily, because you're porting. It depends on how it depends. Really, what you're doing, you're shielding the leading edges. So, look, in your quest to isolate the hot combustion gases from the titanium material, you've handicapped the function of the silencer itself, probably, because you're not able to fully interact with all the surface area of the baffles, and so what you're doing is what your goal would be here. I know what you're doing. You want to take the hot gases away from the leading edges of the titanium baffles, so you stop that particle erosion. And you want to stop the reactivity. Like, I understand what you're trying to do, but the thing is, you do sort of need those edges to create the proper turbulence to let gas expand in an efficient way. So I think I know what you're saying. Maybe draw me a picture. From what I can tell right now, it's not necessarily the best solution for what you're trying to do. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying maybe you need to think that through a little bit. I want to say that's like the Jesse James aerosonic thing. I'm almost positive that's what he's doing. But he has like these weird, like just like washers, and then there's a tube. So what he's trying to do is delay gas expansion and time it so it goes down axially. He's just delaying gas expansion out of the tube. Okay. I've never shot one of those. I'm not sure if it sounds bad or good. It's so big, it probably sounds kind of cool. I don't know. But that's what he's doing in principle. He's delaying gas expansion. So that's what you're kind of doing. And you're also kind of shielding the leading edges of the baffles, but I would then question the rest of your design. I'd have to see a picture, dude. But to answer your question, yes or no, would perforated steel tube running through TI baffles effectively reduce sparking? Potentially, yes. If you are reducing the propensity to have hot gas impingement on titanium and reducing the propensity for particle erosion to take place and then burn in free air with high surface area, then because the particles have a high surface area, then yes, the answer is yes, it would effectively reduce sparking. The answer is longer than you thought it would be. Question 467, sub question 53. Oh, I'm not reading this one. Nope. Yeah, no, I made a note. I'll read you the note I read, or the note I wrote. The note I wrote was, omit due to political fallout and certain controversy. Yeah, I'm not answering it. Someone had asked a question, and sir, I'm not mad at you for asking it, but just so you guys know, he asked a question about it was about testing performed by manufacturers and why they do it like they do it. and any answer I give, it's going to be used against me, and it's going to be used against Pew Science. So I'm not gonna answer that on the podcast. I'm just going to say I'll just keep it topical. I'll keep it Pew Science centric. Pew Science tests the way we do and analyzes the way we do because it's the best and most consistent way to do it. That's also practical and it works. Yeah. Okay, we're the leader, and we do what we do because we're the leader and we lead. And we're here to do the best work there is, and we're going to continue to do that. So that's how I'm going to answer that question. I'm not going to get into an argument. Okay. So thank you, sir, for putting your question in. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thank you for your interest in the research. But I'm not gonna cause a storm of political tomfoolery. Question 468, sub-question 54. Pressure versus impulse. Is one more important? Does design influence performance in one over the other? Oh my God, that is a great question. One second. Oh, great question. Excellent question. So certain systems are more sensitive to pressure than impulse in their response. And when I'm talking about systems, I'm not talking about silencers. I'm talking about the systems that are subjected to the blast loads. So let me repeat that. Certain systems are more sensitive to pressure than they are to impulse, and vice versa in their response. One of those systems is your ear or your ears. Your ears, actually, they care about both pressure and impulse. If they didn't, then the dimension of time wouldn't matter, which would be nonsensical. So you should know that both pressure and impulse matter. There is nuance here that actually makes this extremely complicated. This is actually one thing we've discussed before on the podcast, but I think a lot of people don't understand it. Well, I know a lot of people don't understand it, and I know a lot of people miss it because it's not straightforward at all. So let me try to explain it in like a concise way for the podcast. So pressure impulse space, or PI space, it's really great. It's a great dimensional space with which you can evaluate potential damage due to blast loads. It's something that's been used for decades, many decades. Okay, many decades in the blast effects industry in which I operate. Okay. The reason we do it is because it works very well. It's actually been on the Pew Science website since the very beginning. In 2020, when we launched the website, it's in the Silencer Sound standard. Now, PI space, when you look at it at first glance, it seems relatively simple. You're like, right? When you look at it, you're like, seems simple. The higher the pressure and the higher the impulse, the more potentially damaging a load is to the system. So silencers that have higher pressure or higher impulse should be louder with their peaks, right? You're like, that seems simple. And so a lot of people think that's what happens. And because intuitively that's what they would think. And so that's why, like, I think even some of the silencer companies that, going back to that previous question I didn't answer, some of the silencer companies that think that they say bad things about this. First, they say very bad things about me, and they say very bad things about this company, and they say very bad things about our testing. To them, with their intuition, they think that's how that works. Okay, well, it's not how it works. If they would read it or call me or email me, we could talk about that. So I'll just tell them right now with you. Tell everyone the same thing. Well, I've said this before. While that seems like it's intuitive, what might not make sense to you, what is not intuitive, is that the shape of the curves in the PI space are dictated by various parameters of the loads themselves. Okay? So, for example, if you have one system, like, I don't know, your ears, fine, pick that one, and then you have two different blast loads, you can certainly plot those blast loads in the PI space, and you can use the curves if you want. But if the differential between certain waveform parameters in the loads are too great, like if the loads are too different, not in their magnitudes, but in their other characteristics, if they're too different, you're not going to be able to fit into PI space properly. This is where you lose your map. You don't have a map of where you're going because your load's different. Okay, and I'm saying this in a very conceptual way so that you can all understand it. This is why silencer signatures are, or this is why suppressed weapon systems are so difficult to analyze, because they don't work like your intuition is saying they work. They don't work like that because your ears don't work like that. Okay, this is important. Now keep with me. If you were just using unsuppressed gunshots, or you were just using plain shock loads, like your intuition could guide you, and this would be super easy to do because the amount of the PI dimensions you use are really not that high in those cases. You don't need that many spaces. You're like, okay. But because suppressed weapon systems have such complex signatures with so many different peaks and so many different durations and phase changes, you cannot use a single PI space to map the response. You cannot. You actually have to use several spaces. And I said this in so many words in the Silencer Sound Standard in 2020, and it still remains there to this day on the website. Essentially, you have multi-dimensional PI space to contend with silencer signatures in every single data set that's presented to you on the website in Section 6. So this higher order analysis is part of why the suppression rating is so powerful. Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, it's easy to understand and for you to use. But one of the reasons why the suppression rating is so powerful is one of the reasons why it even works at all. And it's because the suppression rating allows you to hop between PI spaces. Okay? That's why it's proprietary. It's too powerful to give. It would be abused. We created the suppression rating to get around the limitations of lower dimension PI space in a way that's universal. It's the part that's extremely complex, and it's the part that's protected. Okay? It is a multi-dimensional PI space decoder ring. I know that sounds weird. I've said it multiple times. That's what it does. It lets you hop PI space. It's like it's the whole like secret sauce, dude. That's what the suppression rating does. It's awesome. Because you can't do that with just like your peak pressure and impulse. It doesn't work. If you haven't figured that out yet, that's why everyone's screaming at us. Because they'll test. They can go test all they want, and they can get a peak number all day long, and it's not going to tell them anything. Guys, that's why they're so mad. Because they can yell and yell. It's like yelling at clouds. It's old men yelling at clouds. Okay? That's what they're doing. And they're going to yell for years until they do the math. Oh, it's hard. I know. It took a long time. Okay? It works. How about that? So that's a long answer, dude. Short answer to your question is pressure versus impulse is one more important. Does design influence performance in one over the other? I give the long answer. The short answer is they both matter a lot. They both matter a lot all the time for every single system, always. The end. Okay? I know I'm getting aggressive, but it's important. I hope that helps. Question 469, sub-question 55. How much do you think fouling affects suppression in a rimfire can? Significant fouling, of course. This gentleman is saying. With rimfire? How much do I think fouling affects the suppression? I don't know, man. You know, it's interesting. If fouling is significant and it starts filling cavities and it starts masking like any type of surface area contact too with expanding gases, it's like everything's coated and everything's just full and gross and the baffle geometry is changing visibly because everything's packed with the lead. It could noticeably affect it, probably, I would say. I don't. You can tell I don't have any data for you on this, so I'm like, probably a lot. No. One of the things you got to realize, most people don't let it get to that point. So like in general, not letting your rimfire silencers get to that point is a pretty good idea. You want to clean them sooner for a couple of reasons. One reason is you don't want to get debris breaking off and going into the bore. That's bad. Also, the other reason you want to make sure to clean them, if your 22 silencer is one that you can take apart to like disassemble to clean, that's fine. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have one of those, but some of them you can, or a lot of them you can. If you have a system like that and you shoot a lot of 22 through it, you might have trouble getting it apart without special tools. If you shoot like 5,000 rounds of 22 through your take apart 22 silencer, it might like seize up. It happens, dude. So good luck, right? But some of them are going to be easier to take apart than others. They figure that out over the years, and some of them are okay, but some of them can really cake together. So you got to be careful, okay? So maybe that's not, that part maybe isn't with regard to your question about if it affects suppression, but it is about if it affects the utility of the system and being able to maintain it. I guess you could always soak it in something. The future is now, right? All those different things they have. So, I don't know, be careful. Okay, let's see. What time is it? Our intro was what? Like 8 minutes long. I'm at timestamp 1 hour and 5 right now. Oh, gosh, we spent an hour on this. Oh, okay, I'm going to call it. Am I going to call it? Should we go one more, guys? Oh, we'll go one more. Okay, we'll go one more. This is because I'm just looking at this is a good one. Okay, one more question. Question 407. We'll end on an even one. Question 470, sub-question 56. Why is my 11.5-inch AR with a polonium quieter to shooters and bystanders than my 16-inch AR with a polonium K? Both the 16 and 11.5 hosts have H3 buffers and superlative arms adjustable gas blocks. 16-inch has EXT gas system from BRT. I don't know. Okay. There's a lot in there. Let me, in the interest of time and understanding for everyone, I'm going to break that down. Okay, first of all, thank you for the question. It's an interesting question. Let's break it down so we can talk about it. So, configuration. Okay, in your left hand, in configuration A, you have 11.5 5.56 with polonium. Okay. In your right hand, configuration B, you got a 16-inch AR with polonium K. Okay, so short barrel with a polonium, which is a full-size silencer. Longer barrel with a polonium K, which is a short silencer. Okay, cool. Those are the two cases. They both have the same buffer. They both have the same adjustable gas blocks. Yeah, there's some BRT stuff, whatever. But you've tuned both of them. Okay, fine. And you are saying, I'm assuming you've tuned both of them for the silencers. Fine. You're saying the 16-inch. Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry. Okay, you got two systems, two tuned systems, 11.5-inch big silencer, 16-inch small silencer. You're saying that the one with the big silencer, which would be the short barrel, is quieter to everyone. Okay. And they're both tuned with an H3 buffer, and you got a BRT in the 16. Okay. That makes sense. I would say, you're asking why? Well, probably because using more silencer is more efficient to reduce the blast load than a longer barrel is to reduce the blast load. Yeah. So, I mean, I know, you're trapping less gas. You're trapping less expanding combustion gases with a smaller silencer, and you're tuning both guns. So I would expect your 11.5-inch gun to be quieter because the polonium is a lot quieter than the polonium K, according to our data, right? Isn't it? So you have reduced ejection port blast on both hosts through the use of the heavy buffers and the adjustable gas blocks in your BRT, whatever, you've tuned it. Assuming you've tuned the gun, so your ejection port blast becomes less important comparing the two. And what becomes more important? The muzzle blast. Well, what traps more muzzle blast? Well, if the silencers are super, super similar, remember we just talked about alpha and omega and like how you can scale suppression, Well, the polonium K are identical, except for the polonium has more baffles and it's quieter. So that's why the 11.5-inch AR is quieter. Yeah, the 11.5-inch barrel has a higher muzzle pressure than the 16-inch, but the durations are still out there, And the polonium is a quieter silencer, so that's probably why it sounds quieter. Probably why. You've tuned both guns too. Now, if you hadn't tuned the guns and you had crazy ejection port blasts with the polonium, then this might have been a different story. But you're buying a lot by having more silencer, guys. You're buying a lot. Suppression rating is probably higher. That's why. Which agrees with our data and all the things we know about physics when you really consider what's happening. Okay. So without knowing more about your systems, that's my answer. If you add baffles, you're making the whole system quieter despite the 11.5-inch barrel being so short. That's probably why. Okay, hope that helps. Okay, that's a lot of questions. I am going to highlight that row. Oh my goodness, we answered a bunch this time. Yeah, there was some pizza in there and some politics that tried to get me in trouble with, but other than that, I think it was pretty fruitful. All right, I'm tired. Okay, I'm highlighting that row. We're going to close our spreadsheet. That's 470 questions, guys. That's crazy. And we still have a lot to go. So, all right, closing that. Thank you for your participation. Topic 2 at a time of 1 hour, 10 minutes, and 28 seconds. Oh my God. Okay. I probably should have done the second topic first. Topic 2, Sound Signature Review 6145, the Inert Haze Suppressors Ti-P on the HK P30L semi-automatic combat handgun. We're revisiting centerfire pistol silencers. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this design evolution, and it's an evolution of the Resilient Suppressors RSP. Okay, this is just an intro, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to talk about it quickly. So, okay, let me just kind of drink water. 1 second. I'm running out of gas. I don't know if you can tell. Okay. I want to, but I got to do this justice. Okay. Boy, howdy. Listen. I love when we get to showcase new manufacturers. It's awesome. Today is one of those days. Inert Haze, which is another silencer company out of Texas. They are doing some interesting things in the 9mm space right now, as well as the shotgun space for that matter. We'll talk about that later. The silencer we're talking about today is their Ti-P tip, I guess. It's Ti-P. It's titanium-P for silencer. Ti-P, or for pistol. It's a 9mm pistol silencer that's intended to be used on pistols. You can run it on some other platforms if you like, but this is generally for pistols. This is the introductory talk. It's going to focus on the pistol aspect of the silencer, due to that being the subject of the test program we conducted for Inert Haze. Again, the company's name is Inert Haze. So, I think I said this a few months ago, or maybe a few weeks ago. Some of you will recall that I'm a pretty big fan of 9mm pistol silencers. Sure, I like suppressing 22. But for me, suppressing a 9mm combat handgun is one of the coolest things I've ever done. I think it's really high on my list personally. And you don't have to be like me. We don't all have to like the same stuff. Again, I'm just saying, I'm a 9mm handgun guy. I like putting silencers on 9mm handguns. It's cool. So when the Ti-P came to us, I was immediately intrigued. I've seen a lot of pistol silencers over the years. We've tested several of them that you see on the website. This one is kind of cool. Because it's light, it's relatively small, looks classy. Frankly, the performance is pretty good, all things considered. I think you'll get a kick out of it. You'll have to check out the article when you have time. We'll be back next week to do a deep dive and talk technically. Part of what we're going to talk about next week is going to be the design pedigree of the silencer, how it compares to the Resilient Suppressors RSP. I know I'm bringing up Resilient, but so Inert Haze is a different company, but the designer of the Ti-P also designed the RSP. Okay, and you can see the progression of the design in the two silencers actually, like the design concept-wise and gas dynamics-wise. Maybe not geometry-wise, but it's interesting. We'll talk about it, okay? And the performance is actually something interesting between the two. It's very good comparison. It's actually really good comparison. And so there are some similarities and differences, and those are actually highlighted in the article. So again, we'll talk about them next week. You can see that now with the article. It's live right now. Some folks may be looking for a pistol silencer that's quiet enough for what they want to do with it and not super long. and maybe not that heavy, so maybe it doesn't influence balance that much on a pistol. Also, the silencer doesn't have a super large diameter, so it does feel at home on a pistol more so than some silencers that are really big. So maybe some silencers that would be more home on subguns. It's really everyone has their preferences when it comes to pistol silencers, right? So again, and this is maybe a reminder, what have we always talked about with regard to suppressing 9mm combat handguns? Well, you're probably not running around taking a class with this thing, right? You might, but what are they really for? Well, they're for doing stuff quietly when you need to do it. Way quieter than an unsuppressed gun. It's pistol silencers are kind of purpose built things for certain tasks, right? We all kind of beat around the bush here for popping people. A couple shots, boom, you're done. It's not like your ARs as much for a lot of you. So check it out. We're always happy to dive into 9mm pistol stuff. I know not everyone likes it. I love it. So when there's an opportunity, I'm all in. And so again, big thanks to Inert Haze for trusting us to characterize the silencer. I think for you silencer lovers, they did some cool stuff with this thing. So please check out the article to learn more about its performance. And we're going to go super deep into it next week. Okay. So I hope you folks enjoy the data. I hope you enjoyed the listener questions that you asked. Thank you for listening. Again, please take a look at the article. Have a great rest of your week. And I will talk with you folks again soon. Okay? All right, bye.